Well, believe it or not, Curtis, and ladies and gentlemen, we are nearing the end of another season of Bullhorns and Bullseyes. Can you believe we're already here? End of the year type thing?
Season 2. We chugged along this year. Not quite as many episodes as last year, but we put together I think a great season.
Yeah.
A lot of your heroes we got on the
Yes.
show,
Yep.
which was I felt like season 1 was a lot of my network, and then we really tapped into your network this season
Yeah.
2, which has been great.
Yeah, we did. And I loved the emphasis was on storytelling in large part, which was fun for me, the storyteller. So we'll have to see what season 3 holds. Maybe we'll bring a former guest back and have him be like the permanent guest in the permanent guest seat. Which may seem like is the case for some people who, if they've just kind of come in and out, they're like, oh, Mario's back again. Well, yes, Mario is back again because he makes for a great guest. Please welcome back, everyone. Why don't you say the last name, Curtis? You have more practice at it.
D'Aquila. Mario D'Aquila.
Of Assisted Living Services. Welcome back, Mario. How you been?
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. I looked back and I'm like, how's your first guest
You were.
ever? That was the coolest thing ever. I checked that out.
First 3 episodes, and then the semi-finale, I guess you might call it, of season 1, and now you're back for a 5th time in about 75 episodes. So you've been 5 of 75, Mario. Pretty cool.
And
But
speaking
And
of,
now I hear you might want to do a podcast of your own. You're
you guys have inspired me. I think this thought leadership stuff really works. I think there's some you found a niche and you guys just ran with it. It's great. I actually hear a lot of folks, they're like, oh my God, you work with Curtis? You work with Tom Nixon? I'm like, you guys know, wow, all right. Yeah, we see their podcast. So I thought that was really cool. Humbling for me, being even a guest on the podcast. And I said, man, maybe there's something to this podcasting. So everybody can learn something, I guess, right?
well, you seem to be getting the hang of it. So, yeah, pretty good. I mean, by your 5th try, you're way ahead of where Curtis and I even are today. So, good luck with that. Speaking of storytelling, when you came on initially, season 1, we did a 3-part story arc, sort of like before you got really sophisticated with marketing, during the changes you need to make, and then what some of the results have been since then. And so then we revisited with you in season 2, right? Now, what has changed, if anything, from where we left off that 3rd episode? And I know you've been back since, but have you and Curtis, you can answer this too, have you taken the marketing down to another level yet?
Absolutely. I think that, since we last spoke, we were really working on the implementation of, we already implemented call rail, but really starting to improve our conversion rates, because marketing's one thing, but once somebody calls in or inquires, you really have to sell on the other end. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that and how the disc profile leads to that. But what we've been working on recently, kind of highly complex stuff, which is the Performance Max campaigns and sort of how, you know, isolating your target audience could be really good for the efficiency ratio. Maybe if you're trying to track, every dollar spent, but it can also be a negative thing if you're not getting enough information into the system. That I'm really excited to talk about our experience, which has been interesting for me, and I think interesting for Curtis too.
Yeah. So Tom, one of these things, and a big reason I've shared why I got into marketing was seeing the disconnection between the marketing metrics and the sales metrics, right?
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about aligning sales and marketing and bringing those two together. And so when the platforms came around to actually getting these offline conversions, we call them, where you can take the sales data, the qualified leads and the converted leads, and you can send them to the platforms to inform the algorithms. I was like, this is finally an opportunity to take the data that I've been trying to track, send it, but also get my clients on board with tracking the full funnel, and then being able to see with a client like Mario and assisted living, them coming on board and the impact it made. However, this year, uh, through sort of experimentation with Mario and the team, as well as some of our own learning, I've now come to the conclusion that there still sort of is a separation. And what I mean by that is saying that um, marketing's ability to generate a lead is a measurement point that is sort of solely there for marketing. And to be able to take that of let's say we identify an ideal customer profile. So who is that person that we're trying to get our marketing messaging in front of, that we want to interact with the brand? If we're able to successfully do that, whether or not that person actually goes through the sales process, just the ability to get that person to enter the sales process is a win.
For sure.
And what we weren't doing was calculating that as a win. What we were doing was we were waiting for sales to then pick up that lead. And I think in our case with you, Mario, it was sales, if we want to call it sales, or whoever's managing the phones at the front end, whether they answer the phone and then schedule a call back, or it comes in on a form and they want to schedule a call. We were waiting for that second touch point to qualify it in sales before we send that data to Google or to Facebook. And we realized is that's actually incorrect. Like, marketing did its job. It got the lead. Now, what sales is able to do and what that prospect decides to do afterwards is a totally different activity. And it sometimes is a much smaller number than what we had in that first, interaction, that first win. And now we have less data to send to the platforms. So it has less to learn off of. It also has less ability to learn in real time. It might take 5 days. It might take 10 days. It might take 30 days to finally get to that second stage with that leader prospect to qualify it for sales. And that means we have this gap where Google's like, well, was that a good lead? Nobody's telling me. Nobody's giving me any feedback. Maybe it wasn't a good lead. So maybe I should go look for audiences over here, when in reality, it was a good lead. And we just needed to tell the platform that so it could go and find us more leads. So
And
hopefully that sort of story and that narrative makes sense with kind of what we're doing with the data and how we're trying to be accurate about it, but at the same time, get real time and complete information and as comprehensive as we can, I suppose, to the platforms.
yeah, I guess that's brilliant. And my takeaway as you're telling that story is, if you're not taking the wins and counting the wins where they come, you might not be recognizing where in this full loop circle there might be something broken or something to optimize. So, not to say that sales wasn't doing their job, but that's almost immaterial if you have the right lead in the funnel, right? I mean, so let's count that as a win, report it back to Google, then let's address what's happening over here. And I'm sure there's other things that are happening over here really well that, maybe marketing's not doing a good job over here or an optimum job. So what did you discover in this process? And did that fine tuning have any impact, measurable impact?
Yeah, I'll start with that, Mario, and then I'll let you jump in on the business side. But from a marketing perspective, what we found is, so what we did earlier this year is we got tighter with what we were considering a qualified lead. So we had less data we were sending to Google, with the hypothesis that we're sending more accurate data. We're sending people who are further down the funnel, thinking that, hey, we'd get more qualified leads that way. What ended up happening actually was, yes, we continued to get more qualified leads, but now we started spending less. And so our volume dropped. So it's like the quality still stayed good, but we lost volume. And, so that made us sort of realize, okay, if we want to keep volume there, we sort of need to open the pipeline a bit, and we need to tell Google, well, actually, we still want these leads here. We just haven't had a chance to qualify them yet. So there's an earlier stage of sort of getting that data to the platform, and quicker. So now it understands, it's seeing success earlier on, and it's not sort of suppressing some of the advertising, which is, I think, what it's doing. What's your take, Mario?
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, I chunk it into sort of layman's terms. It was we made our Performance Max campaigns picky, right? So it was we were getting the clients that like actual our conversion rate went up, like from a client gaining perspective, starting more clients. But the fact of the matter is it wasn't giving us folks that we may even convert. It was just finding folks that, these guys are solid conversion prospects, as opposed to just give me more. Right. And I think initially, I'll say, when we did this podcast, a while back, it was just bringing the leads, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And we were able to get that very efficient, through kind of fine tuning, but we got it so efficient at this point that it's bringing in only uh, very, very convertible leads and not giving us the opportunity to even convince some folks that they need, what we do. So, and it was sort of a cyclical issue where it's not bringing in, not just, you know, highly qualified leads, but it's not bringing in people that were lukewarm either. So it didn't even feed that information back to Google to say, hey, go find this type of audience. So what we did was we just essentially made it a little less picky, right, Curtis, and reporting the information back to Google quicker by making some tweaks in Salesforce, right, which is our CRM, to essentially say, go look for people that at least we know that they're inquiring about home care. Like they might not be like emergently needing it tomorrow, but at least they were speaking about it with our rep, right? So it takes a little while to undo, right? Because Google learns. But we implemented some of these things, and I can say that we started to see a 10% drop in our web conversions, right, month over month, and we're like, man, and you know what I thought it was? I'm like, Curtis, this is because of AI. People are searching using ChatGPT and different things, and although some folks probably are, um, the real issue was how we made our Performance Max campaigns too picky, right? Look for only these folks, right, that convert way down in the sales process, as opposed to now where it's bring a broader audience, give our sales reps the chance to convert. Just give them the chance.
Yeah. I mean, to break it down into further layman's terms, it's like Google got so good, or you guys got so good optimizing that Google's now only serving up sure things because it wants the highest hit rate possible. Here's your 10 sure things. When Mario, you're saying, give me the 10 sure things and give me 10 maybes because we could convert a maybe too, right? So that's really astute. And that shows too, even though Curtis Performance Max campaigns are designed so that it's almost like set it and forget it and let the algorithm learn, need human oversight to come in here and decode what's really happening. Otherwise, you would have gone on forever saying, hey, our hit rate's 90%. Why change anything?
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of different metrics that Mario and I look at together. And the ones that we were focused on, that we had the bullseye on, which was our cost per acquisition number. How much does it cost to acquire a client? Like best it's ever been, right? It's because we created this model of pure efficiency. But the secondary metric, maybe it's secondary, Mario, I don't know. But from a growth perspective, there's a KPI inside the organization that says, well, we still want to hit volume. So while we're efficient with our marketing and we're doing the best we've ever done with our marketing dollars, that marketing efficiency ratio I've talked about, that improved by like 15%, but we're behind on our volume numbers. So it's balance, right? You got to understand the business goals, and the business goals need to match how you're fine-tuning the algorithm, and you need to look at this comprehensively. And that allows you to pull these levers and make these micro adjustments and then see what response you sort of get from the channels. And then you can, I didn't turn around and say like, oh, we're not getting leads, let's double the budget. Or let's go from a $200 cost per acquisition to a $500 cost per acquisition, right? We're gonna make micro changes to get it back to where we want to get it to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought what I thought was cool about this, though, Curtis, was that we were noticing that our budget was actually, not being utilized to its extent. So from a business owner's perspective, I look at, and a little bit of a finance guy myself. I look at it and I go, oh my goodness, we're spending less. This is great. Look at how efficient everything is operating. But then from that growth perspective, it's growth is challenged, right? When you look at that increase in efficiency. And when you're not growing, you're dying, right? That's what I always say. It's like you're going in reverse, right? And so when we notice this, small decline, thinking quickly, I mean, immediately I'm like I said before, I'm like, oh, AI, it's because of AI. But and that might be some of it, right, Curtis? But at the end of it, it's this micro change about being less picky with our campaigns. So we're hoping to see that make some geometric improvements over the next few months.
Yep. Yeah, and just thinking of uh, diversification as you're talking about AI, diversification is definitely on our mind, and not having all our eggs in one basket. Performance Max, which we started back in 2002 when it first came out, we've been riding that wave for the last 3 years, but it may not be there forever. So we need to diversify and look at other channels. I know you've got your eye on some other channels as far as growth goes as well. Can we? Is there any news that we can share, Mario, on this podcast with other internal changes you guys are doing to grow?
Well, I could tell you, um, in our industry and probably a lot of service industries, one particular way to grow obviously is organically. Another is through acquisitions, right? And actually geographic expansion of the services that you provide. And that's something that we've been focusing on this year primarily is acquiring agencies like ours, looking for synergies, whether they're marketing synergies, whether they're operational synergies, financial synergies, and then also cultural synergies with acquisitions. I think that's something that is often overlooked, particularly in private equity investing. A lot of private equity buyers come in, and the numbers look good, and from a sort of a they call it a confidential information memorandum. From that perspective, you look at it and you go, oh, the numbers are great. They have a good payer mix. They have you know these metrics that I'll call them, maybe some of them are just fiscal metrics, but you don't really know what's going on with that company until you go and meet the owners and actually meet the folks that are working, right? And oftentimes an acquisition can look great on paper, and you go in to start blending company cultures, or even before you do that, right when you just start meeting with folks that work at that company, just to go in for your initial meeting, you'll know whether or not that company is a good kind of bolt on to your company culture, because oftentimes company cultures clash, and that takes years to undo, and sometimes it never gets undone, frankly. So from that perspective, an acquisition that might look great can just be a dud at the end of the day. When maybe they're not embracing change. Maybe your company is on the forefront of technology and things. Maybe their company has not embraced technology. That's very difficult to change in a company culture.
Yeah. Well, I think that provides a useful segue from one set of acronyms to another. So we talked the first couple seasons in the first part of this episode about KPI. But when you're doing something like change management or bringing organizations together, there's another tool that's popular out there that I know you've employed, Mario, and that acronym is DISC, DISC, the DISC profiler. So explain what that is briefly and how you've applied it to your organization, because there is going to be the turnaround, the twist ending where it's going to all come back to sales. But first, let's talk about operational management, DISC. What is it?
So DISC was introduced to me back in 2019. you guys know that I follow Tony Robbins, a lot of his work, and we went through Business Mastery, which is a fantastic program. And one of the things in that was to take a disc assessment. First of all, I was like, "What is a disc assessment? Is it like Myers Briggs, right? Is it something similar to it?" It's actually a lot more simple than that, right? Everybody has a personality type. Some folks have blends of personality types. Everybody really does have a blend. They're not stuck in one particular silo. But everyone has uh, more dominant um, features in one or another of those characteristics. So we learned it. I took a disc assessment. I thought it was really neat. And one of those kind of eye opening moments is when you kind of learn about yourself.
Hmm.
And sometimes you're like, oh man, I don't like that much. You read the profiles and you're like, I didn't know I was that. I don't really like it. There isn't really a way to inherently change it. I mean, I know you can try to change it or mask it or act differently. But inherently you'll always be a little stressed if you do try to go outside your
Yes.
disc profile. Um, and I actually think that folks should try that, right? They take a disc assessment, they maybe learn some of their faults, some of their strengths, and they try to mold themselves to adapt to different disc communication styles. I can pop right into it too, and what we do at our company.
Yeah, well, just real quick, we'll explain. This was oversimplification, but DISC stands for the four sort of behavioral types or dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. That is oversimplifying it. So if you're interested in learning about it, we'll talk through what some of that stuff means. And usually you're dominant in one of those quadrants or one or two, right? So a high D, for example, is somebody that we all think of as type A, right? Just give me the facts. Don't bore me. Just tell me what I need to know. I'm going to make a quick decision. I don't even care if it's the right decision. We're going, right? That's that type of person. So all the way to the complete other end of the spectrum is somebody like me, who's a high C, who wants to know all the facts. I've got to do all of the study. I need to build a system to fix this. I'm not ready to decide yet. Hold on, right? So you can see two people, if they're partners and they're operating from that dynamic, there's going to be some friction, right? So that's just two people. Now
Absolutely.
imagine you've got 50 people and you're bolting on 20 more, and now you have aspirations to be 500. So that's wherein it becomes complex, and a tool like this helps to simplify or at least make sense of that. So how have you employed it internally, Mario?
So what we've done is when somebody's hired, we kind of let them, work here for a few months, before we give them one of these tests to take. Some companies, by the way, would just, upon application, they'll send you one of these tests as well. We don't do that. Maybe we should. But after you're working here a few months, we actually will give you a disc assessment, right? And the reason why we do that is A, you can learn more about yourself, and B, so that we can actually let everyone know who you are. It's not just something, oh, here's your disc profile. We actually have a matrix that we create, everybody's disc profile on it. And we highly encourage that folks actually learn about one another so that the next time they go to approach them with a task, an assignment, anything, they are able to adapt a bit more to that communication style. And I'll give you an example of when you don't do that, you can see lots of dissension. You can see people that maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe the way that you asked them to do a project was incomplete and they're a high C. High C has to know, hey, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I just went to you, Tom, and I said, hey, I need you to grow our leads by 15% by next week. Here, Tom's gonna start sweating, right?
Right.
He's like,
Yeah.
well, where do I start? What tools do I have?
Hmm.
Um, where a high D is like, got it. And they'll just, they might go after it. And they might totally blow it, by the way, because they might be too cocky, right? In
Right.
their, um, the way that they do things. Or high I might go for it and, it turns into maybe something else, right? Um, And so in order to interact with folks, at least in my company, I have a conscious effort every time that I even send a Teams message, by the way. You can have a sort of a negative or positive reaction to how you communicate with somebody based on their disc profile. And really based on, I always say how they're doing that day, but, don't that actually has something to do with it as well. It's like, okay, if a high D is having a bad day and you give them, you go and you start talking about how their weekend was and, how their kids are, and they're just trying to drill down on emails and they have to like, I have a task to do today. They will come across as crabby.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was thinking the inverse of what you said. If I, the high C, go into a high D office, my boss's office, say, "Hey, do you have about an hour? I want to walk you through the observations I've made in my first 90 days here. And I have this 12-point systematic plan to get us from A to B, and it should only take 60 minutes." That person's ears are going to start steaming. And Curtis, you and I have actually started to employ concepts behind this with some of our clients, because we will do these long research projects to get to a point where we can give some actionable recommendations, right? And there was the realization that we had that, well, some people just want the recommendations. Other people like don't care what the recommendations are unless you can show me that you've proven it. So we did the stupid thing and we just started asking people, how do you want this presented to you? Because we don't have their disc profile.
Right. Right. Yes. Do you want to see how the sausage is made?
That's the question we keep asking.
Or do you need a pretty presentation here? Can we just pull up the documents and show you our findings? Right. And we're pleasantly surprised at some of the responses and thoughtfulness. I think most of those clients appreciated us asking and then
They
said,
did.
"Yeah, I don't need to see the presentation. Don't waste your time on that. Let's spend our time on how you came up with what you came up with." Right. So um it's been really refreshing. And everybody's what I've learned about this is everybody's uh has different drives or motivations, right? It's
Mm.
been a big thing with me and understanding disc and some of the other profiling out there, I suppose, is that when you're in a team environment, you do have to understand, right, Mario, that like what motivates this team member here is going to be completely different than this person here. And as a manager or leader, you need to understand that those people are unique and different, and you need to approach those conversations, the communication part of it, potentially differently. And it's actually sort of a beautiful thing. Sometimes you want a team that is a mixture of the various profiles, because dynamically together they can make a better team. I've always liked the 90s um, Chicago Bulls example, right? Of like you had a Dennis Rodman, you had Michael Jordan, you had Horace Grant, Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr. You had all these people had different gifts and different drivers and different things, but together they made like the ultimate team.
Mhm.
And I think that's what you want in a workplace environment too. You don't want all the same personalities.
And it all depends on what department too.
Yeah,
So it's not just a
HR is going
team.
to be different than sales.
Yes, we often find that in accounting and fiscal, high C's and S's are excellent, right? They do well. Typically a high I in accounting, um, maybe a little distracted, right?
Right.
High I in sales, the best, right? The
Yeah.
best. High D and I in sales are just fantastic.
Yeah, you want
Um,
the high eyes to be chasing every bright light and squirrel that runs past, right? You like, go get them. As opposed
exactly,
to then this is why I'm horrible at sales. I'd be like, well, hold on. Let's find out what they're looking for. Let's go back and make a plan and then present them with some options, right? And I'm the worst salesperson in the world.
well, I can tell
What's
you
go ahead.
from that aspect. I mean, the sales aspect, Tom, is our marketing can bring folks in, look at our website, check us out. Uh, see our bulletins everywhere. They see our social media. But at the end of the day, sales is actually, they need to be artists at knowing disc, because every time that phone rings and every interaction that you have with a customer, they have a disc profile also. So maybe if you're a high I in sales and you get somebody that's a high D on the phone to ask about the services that you're promoting, that high D wants to know how much it is. And they want to know when you can start. And you go off kind of talking about different things that maybe are going on in their life or whatever, trying to get chummy with who that person is. High D may be anxious about that. They may get not just anxious, but maybe angry.
Put
Like
off.
just
Yeah.
give me how much is this and when can you start, right? So I think it's really important from a sales aspect. And I love what you guys do. You just ask, like, how do you want your report done? You want us to tell you how it is? You know, do you want us to get into the calculus of it, or do you just want to know what the target is we're going to hit and how much it's going to cost? And I
Well,
think that's really important.
that's a challenge though. And like, would that every prospect show up at your doorstep with their disc profile and hand it to you, right? Because that would be great. You just look at it. Okay, high D, right? Again, the inverse of what you said is if somebody tells me the price of something in the first 30 seconds, that comes across as pushy. All they wanted was the sale. They didn't want to educate me. They didn't want to, they didn't hear me, all that stuff. So how does a good sales team then, because A, they're not handed a disc profile, B, it's a weird thing to ask. We're asking this of our existing clients, right? So we've already had this rapport and relationship. I mean, you're not going to ask a prospect, hold on, before I answer your questions, are you a high D or a high C,
Yes.
right? So because I think this is a useful tool very much in sales, but how do we weave it in? Is it training? Is it just experience? Is it innate? What are you doing, Mario?
Yeah, it is experience. I mean, and it is training. And you have to listen to the customer at the end of the day. You know, so when they're calling in or you're meeting with them, you'll get a sense almost right away what style they are if you do enough studying in this, right? If you really start asking, again, we're at home care, so I'm going to use this example. But when we start asking, well, how's mom doing? You know, how is she when you go over, you know, um, does she interact well with, friends, family? And when that person starts answering those questions, they're either going to extend that explanation or they're going to cut it short. Okay. So right off the bat, and you're just listening, you know, mom does great with friends. We go over, she does fine. How much is this? Whoa, we're dealing with a high D here, right? Or even a C, by the way. I can say a C might get into it. They might say, well, I really need to know how much this is, but what time are you going to come over? What happens if this happens with mom? Do you call this number or do you call this number? They're going to ask specific questions about the um really the high description of what type of care or service that you're providing, as opposed to a D, it's like, how much is it? Or an I will really get into maybe even family history, right? And you're going to learn about that as a salesperson, and you will know right away uh, who that person is. And I failed to mention S because I feel like they get the short end of the stick a lot. Um, but high S is, and in a sales context, they're friendly. They always want everything to get along. They're not going to show disinterest in the product or service. Generally, they'll say, "Okay, we'll get back to you." They're the "we'll get back to yous."
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're not going to say no right up front. They may not give a definitive answer in any kind of way. They're the maybes, right? And the challenge in sales is to really get over that hump and to try to learn who they are, and the follow up is key, right? But knowing their disc profile um, is very important, and you'll get that from listening, though,
Right.
and not over dominating the conversation.
Curtis, the light bulb for me now is sales is a one-to-one communications opportunity. Marketing, which often sits in front of sales, is one to many, and the many includes every disc profile, which is why I think coming back full circle to why, how, what, which is everyone who comes to the site is seeking the service for this compelling why. If you connect with them on why, the D's are going to want to go right to the pricing page, right? The C's are going to go to the about page, right? And then the maybe the high eyes will go to they will just poke all around, right? They don't. So we
Right.
need to present marketing content in copy and messaging, knowing that you need to appeal to every single one of those disc profiles. You can't just have your pricing on your homepage, and you can't just have the about us long story on the homepage. And that's why we're nurturing these users, whether it's an ad, it's a website, or whatever it is, through a funnel that holds their hand along the journey we want them to, but knowing that there's all these other pathways to go to as well. So there's my aha moment from this season.
Right. Yeah. And it's not this linear path that we try to create it, right? It's like we're going to create a landing page and then we're going to funnel and we're going to tell this story in a specific way that everybody's going to get sort of pulled into, because not everybody's going to respond to it in the same way. I mean, it takes me back to one of my aha moments this season was with Will and marketing to mind states, right? That they're the mind states of that ideal customer profile need to be defined, which is what are their goals, what are their motivations, what problems do they have, and those types of things. So you're creating that ICP, that ideal customer profile, understanding those things. But even inside of that, so again, it's not just an avatar. Well, it's this is a person who's of this age and of this gender, and they have this income. It goes beyond that to say, no, they actually have problem pain or aspirations. And at this specific time, they're motivated by these specific things. But then even once you get inside of that, now there's a specific way to communicate to that person to sort of uncover or get at whatever those motivations and goals actually are, and being able to identify those once they come into the sales process and be able to communicate appropriately is just going to increase your win rate, which has been really the goal on the sales side for you guys, right? Mario has been like, okay, we're bringing in leads. It's costing us this to get to acquire the leads. If we just get a little bit more efficient closing a few more leads, man, that revenue and that efficiency goes way up, doesn't it?
It does. And again, this is only something that at this point a human can do. I
Right.
was thinking about this a little bit, as you were speaking, Curtis, and I know AI is just taking off to new levels. Um, and I wonder if AI is ever going to be able to kind of know and predict somebody's communication style when they're talking to them, right? You're going to get some of these voice activated AI when you call in. I know a lot of companies are looking into that, but are they going to be able to sell in a way in which I described? Are they going to be able to adapt to that person's characteristics and profiles when they call in? I mean, my best guess is yes, but right now that's high tech, that's sci-fi.
Well,
Yeah,
and the key in your industry is empathy. And I think AI is trying to adapt some level of empathy right now, and it will to some degree. But uh, I mean, I know you have amazing staff there who I've interacted with who have long careers in working in this industry who they can they understand what that person's going through when they call. Oh, mom was just diagnosed with dementia. There's a lot on our minds and our hearts right now. You're going through a lot. So your staff can empathize with that. They can relate to it in a real way, right? And so now it is like they don't necessarily talk. What would be the Sandler rule, Tom? Right? There's a reason why we have two ears and one mouth, right? So they start asking questions and they start listening to build that rapport. And now it sounds like hey, we could identify what are the motivations behind this person, this individual, and then take them down that path for good reasons, not just to close the deal. Ultimately, you want to provide the best care to families in the state of Connecticut and now going beyond. So, there are virtuous goals in this, and it's how can we better train our teams to serve the communities that we serve.
sure. And provide insight. I think that's one thing that when a lot of folks are calling in any type of service business is the person on the other end of the phone, we'll call them a salesperson, does that person know the product or service inside and out, right? Because people see right through that. right? I know way back I used to work at Best Buy. Um, and maybe they have better training now, but back then they didn't have great training on the products. So I can remember to this day, kind of getting thrown into the uh mobile audio section. So we were selling like car audio, sub subwoofers and amps and stuff like that. And I just remember, a customer came in asking me about, do you guys remember that TomTom, that GPS,
Yeah.
right? Um, that was kind of part of the car experience. Like I had to manage those, and no one taught me anything about those. Like literally nothing. So all I would do is read the box and read the little tag. And I remember this guy, he's like, "Hey, I need some help over here." And we kind of go over, and he's like, "What's the difference between this one and this one?" And I start reading off the box, and right away the guy was like, "I can do that. Like I can just read off the box. Like, do you know the difference to these two?" And I remember that to this day. And I don't know, even know, I don't think he bought the product actually at the end of the day because the salesperson didn't know the product,
Hmm.
right? So by knowing the product, you know, and knowing inside and out, I mean, every single thing that that person asks about your service or product, you should be able to answer as a salesperson. Or if not, get back to them really quickly because customers see right through it, right? So not just knowing your customer, knowing your product or service inside and out. So you don't end up like me back at Best Buy back in, I don't even know how long ago that was, early 2000s or something like that. Uh, but that story always resonates to me. I feel like I'd share it today because I thought it was pertinent to a sales conversation. Knowing your product, knowing who your customer is, and being able to provide insight, something that they don't already know about that industry, that service, some little nugget that you can share with them that even though if they don't need your product or service at the end of the day, they took something away, right? And that's sort of why and you guys inspired me on the podcast idea. It's like teaching people some insight that they could take away at the end of the day is just so valuable, not just for your brand, but for the community in general. So I thought that was pretty cool.
You
Yeah.
got the topic there for your opening episode.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
See, yeah. Man, we're in the podcast making business today. Well, real quick, Mario, because we're getting to the end of our time, believe it or not, already. Have you noticed either anecdotally or do you have data that suggests that applying disc to a sales environment has generated success, increased close, anything like that?
So I'm actually studying that right now. And I think the next maybe podcast, I'll have some more information on it. Did we improve our close rate? Um, and so forth. And, did we keep some profiles and maybe some, avatars of certain clients and how to speak to them if they have certain disc profiles? It may be a new kind of training mechanism for our sales team. So all that I will have for you. I don't have it today, but I'm excited to kind of keep that tallied up and maybe share it with you next time.
Season 3, yeah, he's trying to get it back on season 3 now, Curtis. I see what's happening here. All right. Well, we love cliffhangers in this business. I will just give you my final takeaway is that this disc phenomenon exists whether you like it or not. This has been studied for decades and decades. So apply it to your sales, definitely apply it to your operations, but apply it to your marketing as well. Just keep in mind that you have all these different people who are interacting with your brand and they all have different sort of behavioral styles and ways that they want to be communicated with. And if you understand disc, I think you can apply it to your marketing and your sales. So Curtis, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it reminds me of just the art and science combination of what we do, both on the marketing side as well as the sales side. That there's an element of structure and foundations and processes and those types of things, but then there's the creativity that goes into one person having that understanding and using their own unique skill set uh, and their own unique personality to sort of play into that and allow that to come out. And I think again, if you can uncover that in an organization and allow your team members to thrive, and they can figure out where it is that they're motivated and they best succeed, they can play to their strengths. If you're familiar with strength finders, they can play to their strengths. You can create a pretty powerful organization with a lot of happy people, mind you, right? I think they were pretty happy on that Bulls team when that team was playing to their strengths, right?
You
And they
had
were
to
pretty
pick the
successful.
Chicago Bulls. I mean, I'm a diehard 90s Bad Boys fan, and you're going there with this Michael Jordan business.
I'm
All
from
right.
Chicago.
Yeah, I
I grew
know.
up with that team.
I'll allow it because it is actually a great example. Bill Cartwright, you didn't mention him. Anyways.
Oh, it's free throw.
Yeah, exactly.
Because his head, this whole.
Mario, I think I know your final thought. Can I guess it?
Go ahead.
I think you've been watching this podcast for 2 full seasons now, and you're thinking, why should Curtis have all the fun wearing the hats? Like, why don't I bring a hat? Right? We're filming this on Halloween day. I'm sure you have a hat right there at the ready, right?
I do have a hat for you.
This is like Lee Corso on College Game Day.
You go. That's my final thought from Willy Wonka.
Yep, pure
Happy
imagination.
Halloween.
All right, thank you, Mario. Well, we'll see what kind of tricks you can pull out of that hat for season 3 and season 1 of your next podcast. We'll be watching it. Where do people go if they want to learn more specifically about your services? Give us the website, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Definitely. Yeah. So for more about our services, and actually products from Assisted Living Technologies too. So our home care company is Assisted Living Home Care Services. And you can go to us on the web, assistedlivingct.com or assistedlivingtechnologies.com, our sister company, where we offer all kinds of neat home care devices to help seniors age in place.
Perfect.
My mom's got one of the watches.
Yes.
Yep.
There
She
you go.
sure does.
Cool. Yeah. Nice little plug there. All right. Awesome. Curtis, we're almost to the wrapping of a season 2. We have one more episode. Until then, we'll thank everyone for being here, and we'll see you next season, Mario. But everyone hang on for one more week, and we will see you next week on Bullhorns and Bullseyes.